Kia ora, I'm Erin J. Doyle. Welcome to my channel. Apologies first of all for the background noise of the fan. It was that or melting death. So this video is going to be, as I'm sure the title of the video suggests, 38 book reviews in 38 minutes, or maybe even less. What I have decided to do is review every book that I have read this year. I'm going to set a timer. When the timer goes off at that 1 minute mark, I have to stop speaking, and if I'm mid-sentence, well, tough. That's it. I think this is going to result in a lot of chaos and stumbling over my own tongue, and maybe that'll be entertaining, so I'm also going to do an absolute minimum of editing while I do this, unless there is some like major distracting awfulness. I'm going to try and just do it in one take. Because I think, you know, you might enjoy my suffering and my struggles. The only thing I will do though is try and reduce the volume when the alarm goes off, because I think that would get really irritating. What else? Oh yes, if something is in a series, I can talk about the series as a whole, all together, but I don't get extra time, just to make it extra hard. So, I think that's everything. I'm like getting a bit nervous, already regretting wearing a rattly bracelet, but you know, that's fine. Okay, so I've got the my phone literally on the upturned washing basket in front of me because I don't have a side table. I've got every single book I've read this year in a stack next to me in absolutely no particular order. It was literally just pulled them off the shelves and threw them in a pile, so there will also possibly be some chaos as I try and grab books and things, but it's fine. Okay, have I done all of the blah blah I needed? I think so. Okay, here we go. Oh no, 3. Okay, so first up we have volumes 9 through 21 of My Hero Academia. This might be a controversial opinion, but the more I read of this, the more certain I am that the anime is better. I think that when you're reading this, there's something that's been done which works on screen, where you have the, the sound of characters' voices to help you figure out who is speaking even if they're not visible. That works. They've done it here as well, so you might see that someone is speaking and then their conversation will continue over not just multiple panels but maybe multiple pages in which they are not present and someone else is maybe having a fight, and you have the dialogue from the fight and the dialogue from the person watching at the same time, and you kind of forget who's speaking, and it works in the anime because you can see it and you can That was hard. That was a really hard one to start with. Okay, we're just gonna move on. Okay. Next, I read the first 4 Heartstoppers. I believe there is a 5th coming. Can't wait for it. This, for those of you who are mysteriously unfamiliar, is I didn't talk about what My Hero Academia was about. Never mind, we don't have time for that. This is a boy meets boy, and it is so incredibly wholesome and inclusive, and their relationship as it develops through the books is so healthy. They don't proceed super quickly in a way that isn't realistic for high school. I think a lot of young adult books tend to kind of lean into the sex, drugs and rock and roll option, which yes is true for some young people, but also a lot of young people get their first boyfriend and don't immediately sleep with them. A lot of young people don't drink and experiment with drugs, etc. until they're like in their 20s, if at all. So it was actually, as you know, I don't know, an old lady, I guess, that was really nice to see. Shit, I had more to say. Oh god, the pile's already falling. Okay. All Boys Are Not Blue, aren't blue. This is a young adult memoir of a young African American guy, person. I believe their pronouns are now they, them. My apologies for that error. So this is their journey as a queer person who is also black, and the times where those two identities don't work well together, and their journey to kind of find themselves and secure like their masculine identity from childhood through their college years, joining a fraternity and all those kinds of things. I didn't get a lot out of this, but I'm very much not the target audience, like in any demographic. So for me, this was just like, oh yeah, it's a memoir about a person doing personal stuff. Oh, what did I press? Okay. Fire is the sequel to Graceling, and it is a really fun fantasy adventure, just as Graceling was, but it is set in a different region than the first book, and these two regions are geographically isolated, and they have completely different magic systems. So reading this book had that same fun, learning the new world, the new magic system kind of stuff that you usually get from a book one. So even though this is like the book two, which for me is always the worst book, this was actually still really interesting because it was that element of discovery was being maintained. This world, well, this region has, as I said, a completely different magic system, and they are geographically separated, but the two stories are kind of linked. This story actually is telling the history that led to the first book, so it's kind of a prequel, but I don't think you'd get anything out of it. 1 minute is not long enough. I'm really struggling. Right, The Keeper of Night. This is about a person who is half Grim Reaper, half Shinigami. She has lived in London her whole life, but always been treated as a complete outsider because of her Shinigami heritage. After some stuff happens, she leaves London and travels to Japan, expecting that there she will fit in because she's been raised to see herself as very Shinigami. So when she gets there and is treated like a foreigner, that comes as a bit of a shock. This has a lot of stuff in it which was very new to me in terms of the world building, because it has a whole bunch of Japanese mythology and legend built into it, so that was really fun and interesting. It is really dark, and I don't really like the main character because she kind of sucks, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's like not a fun story. It just kind of means that I wasn't really oh my god, it's not long enough. She's a killer. The main character in this is almost a genius. She has had multiple tests done and she always comes up as just 1 point shy of genius, and for some reason this is like the center of her identity. It is, yeah, a story about a person who could have been awesome but is not living up to her potential, and the fact that she's like almost a genius is really important to her. Then she, you know, there's some adventure-y stuff, I guess, with a person coming to live with her who she realizes is a murderer and has an agenda, is maybe trying to save the world, blah blah blah. But the whole thing around her, you know, being a person with all of this intellectual potential who isn't living up to that potential is kind of irrelevant. Shit, this isn't long enough. Oh no, and things are already on the floor. Okay, alright, I think I need to just, I can't talk faster. What do I need to focus on? What the book is about, a pro or con, surely. I can cover that in a minute, right? Oh god, okay. The Witchfinder's Mark is a folk horror about a witch finder who's perfectly aware that the people who are being convicted of witchcraft because of his interrogations are not witches. He knows that he is a charlatan, that all of his tests are just generating suspicion and creating situations where people confess due to stress and the situation that he has created. But then he finds out witches are real, and he now has to go on a journey to track down the witches which have marked him. And I did not enjoy it in any way, shape or form. I was irritated the entire time I read it. I could go on probably at length about the things about this I didn't enjoy. I am really disappointed in this book, and it was a 2-star for me. I had 2 seconds to spare. Okay, that worked okay. Okay. The Hush is set in the very near future. The current pandemic has really only just finished, but there is now a new illness which is killing infants at birth. The pregnancy seems normal, the birth seems normal, but they never draw their first breath. And this has led the government to bring in a whole lot more restrictions, building on top of what previously existed due to the pandemic. Everyone has to wear a tracker, abortion is illegal, and if you have a pregnancy test you have to take it in the pharmacy and your results are registered with the government. There is no privacy regarding this. The main characters are a woman who works in a maternity ward and is obviously at the front lines of this illness and the battle to fight it, and then her teenage daughter, who in the opening chapter finds out she's pregnant. And her fear with that isn't just what is she going to do, what are her options. Her fear is that pregnant teenagers... I needed one more word. 3 more words. I needed 3 more words. Okay. Why am I doing this? It's so hard. Okay. Blood Sugar is about a female murderer. The story is set where she is sitting in a police station being questioned about 4 deaths. She's only responsible for 3. And as she's being questioned, it jumps back in time to tell the story of each of the deaths. It does have some diabetic representation, hence the blood sugar thing. I don't think this is a spoiler, pretty sure it's not. Her husband is one of the 4 deaths. She is not responsible for that one, and he passed away in his sleep due to a diabetic coma, I think is the correct. My apologies if that's not correct, but yes, diabetes takes him out. The other deaths she did have a hand in though, and as I said, this is showing it all for, and how it all came together. I struggled. Why did I struggle? I think I forgot what the book was about while I was talking. Okay. This is not getting easier. Loop Tracks starts with a teenage girl in the 1970s unable to access an abortion in New Zealand. She has to catch a flight to Australia to get her pregnancy taken care of. For various reasons, she doesn't end up going on that flight and ends up being sent down south until the problem is solved. She is forced to give the child up for adoption, and then the story skips forward to when she is an older woman raising her biological grandchild, and it talks a lot about both abortion rights in New Zealand as well as euthanasia, because those 2 things were being discussed in Parliament at the time the book is set. And a lot of the story kind of focuses around trauma that she has regarding how the pregnancy started. Obviously trigger warnings for rape and etc. However, shit! Oh, this is so hard. A Good Winter is a thriller about an older lady who is helping her friend's daughter raise her son and kind of recover following the loss of her husband. It starts off with her having really strong busybody vibes, constantly showing up at this house and taking control of changing the baby's nappies, etc. And as the story goes, she goes from being a little bit busybody to being kind of nasty. You start to see that she's actually quite an unpleasant person, even though she maybe doesn't say everything that she's thinking. And she starts doing quite manipulative things and really focusing kind of obsessively on the friend. And I got to the end of this and wasn't 100% sure that it actually counted as a thriller, because I felt that whilst it was really tense, like I was really on edge the entire time I was reading this, I didn't feel there was quite enough payoff for that tension. However, other people I have... Great! Oh god. The Pink Jumpsuit is a collection of short stories, which I absolutely loved. I did kind of devour this. However, I only remember one of the stories in this. I know I have 3 stories tabbed, but I have no idea what they are. The first story really grabbed you and pulled you in and kept you paying attention and worried right up to the end. But I have no idea what the rest of it is about. I know that I gave this a 4-star when I first finished it, and I thought, like, this is the best collection of short stories I've ever read, but clearly there was no lingering of those stories, so maybe it wasn't quite worthy of that rating long term. Oh my god, I have time to spare. That hasn't happened yet, has it? Well, I guess the fact that I didn't remember what it was about probably saved me some time. Okay. Loveless is about a young person heading off to university, expecting to find love, because everyone in her family has found the one and lived happily ever after, and she's kind of expecting that for herself, but she's starting to realise that maybe that's not in the cards for her. This is the story of her coming to realise that she is aromantic, asexual, and what that means for her. And it focuses a lot on her relationships with her friends, and that's kind of about it. I actually really enjoyed this, even though I feel like I've just given it a really crappy summary. I think a lot of people would really connect with this, even if a person is not asexual, aromantic. I think that idea of expecting to find love and not finding it, and what that might mean for you, is something that I think straight people would also really connect with. So I actually recommend this for pretty much everyone. I kept talking. Oops. Have I got them all? Okay. I read the first 6 books of Tokyo Ghoul. I do intend to keep reading this series. I think these books are really well written, really easy to read. They are really dark. I think visually there are some scenes where it's kind of hard to figure out what you're actually seeing, and a little bit of colour would probably help. I haven't seen the anime, maybe that would clear up the visual information situation a little bit. There was something that happened in the first book that was scientifically impossible and really pissed me off, but I persevered, and I think in book 5 or 6 it was actually clarified, and it turned out not to be a horrible mistake and lack of research, but actually a plot point, so I'm looking forward to figuring out where this is going. 14 seconds to go. Ghouls live among us, they're eating us, we can't tell who they are. Oh my god, 7 more seconds. The main character is a hybrid. Oh, that's it. I didn't think this would be this hard. Like, I thought it would be easy, but I didn't think it would be hard. Okay. Greta and Veldin, brother and sister, both gay, and just going about their lives. It does feel a little bit slice of life to begin with. You don't really know where it's going, and it took me a while to get into it, but definitely for the last half or so of this book I devoured it. I was giggling uncontrollably at times. It ended up filling me with a lot of joy. So I think if you start reading this and you're thinking it's a bit slow, where is this going, persevere, it'll pay off. One of the main characters, which one? Veldin has OCD. It was the first time I've read a character with OCD, and I thought from a place of complete ignorance and not actually knowing, I thought that the representation was done quite well. It allowed me to kind of empathise with the way he felt and the way that he saw the world around him. So I think that was done really well. As I said, very, very gay. There are lots of... Damn. I think what I'm gonna do... Is it cheating if I put like what star rating I gave it on the front of the thing? Because then I can at least tell you, even if I completely screw up the review, I can at least hope I liked it or not. Okay. Kurangi Ituku, an unusually structured book. You can read it from this cover or you can read it from this cover, and because the story has a kind of cyclical nature, it'll work either way. I read it from this cover where it starts with the origins of Kurangi Ituku, the monstrous bird woman of Māori legend who took Hatupatu hostage. Because we obviously know the legend, it's not a spoiler to say Hatupatu escapes, Hatupatu kills her and goes on to be the hero of the story. But this is from her perspective, so we get to see why she captured him. We get to see them having some development of a relationship while he is in captivity, his eventual betrayal, and how he comes to kill her in the end. This also gives page time to other female figures of Māori legend, which we don't usually hear from. A lot of women from Māori legend have I reached. I was hoping for like quite a bit more time. Oh my god. Oh my god, this is hard. Okay, I'm gonna stop complaining about how hard it is because I think half the video is gonna be there if I don't shut up. Moving on. A non-fiction, Women Don't Owe You Pretty. I have tabbed the living hell out of this book, please focus, because it contains a lot of really good stuff. However, none of it was really new to me. It was just termed or phrased in a way that I thought was really accessible and that I thought I might wish to refer to later if having a conversation with a younger woman. I don't think this is going to be an enlightening or new conversation or book for the seasoned feminist, but for someone who is relatively new to those conversations, this might be a life changer. If I had read this book in my late teens, it might have blown my mind. I actually kind of wish I had read it back then. It has a very accessible and conversational tone, with the narration directly addressing you, occasionally referring to the reader using endearments like babe, etc. It also... Damn. Go Tell the Bees That I Am Gone is the 9th book in the Outlander series, and unfortunately I just didn't think this was worth the effort of reading it. It is quite the tome, and the title of the book, if you know anything about traditional practices around beekeeping, is a spoiler. That doesn't pay off. The imagery of the bees, I think, was just overdone. There was a whole lot of content which just felt like repeated ideas from previous books. There was evidence from the future that one of the characters was going to die, but he didn't, which has happened in a previous book. A character gets the feelings for his cousin's woman, which has happened in a previous book. The same guy even. So it just felt a little bit like I've been there, done that. It feels like she's kind of run out of ideas. There's actually more, but Dead Until Dark is the first book of the Suki Stackhouse series, which obviously spawned the True Blood series. I haven't watched all of the series, but from memory this book does seem to be something they've kept really strongly to. It felt extremely familiar while I was reading it. To be honest, I pretty much only read this because I have some vague thinking that I might eventually do some kind of academic thesis blah blah on vampire literature, and this is one that's everywhere, so that's actually why I picked it up. It was actually surprisingly good. It didn't piss me off the way a lot of contemporary vampire fiction did, so that was good. However, who knows how the series is going to pan out in that regard. Oh my god, I have more time. Vampires are out. I keep forgetting to tell people what the book is about. This is not helpful. It didn't even make sense. I might have to refilm this. This is so bad. The Archive of the Forgotten is the sequel to The Library of the Unwritten. I have gushed about that book in a previous video. I would gush about this one if I had the time. Every book which has never been written is in a library in hell. And all the afterlives of all the religions are real. In the previous book they went to Valhalla, in this book they go to Elysium. It's all kind of interconnected and interesting. In this book they're carrying on the adventures from the first book, but trying to answer the question of why is there a library in hell? What are these books even made of? Where do they go when they are destroyed? And it's so good. And the developing relationship between Hero and a fallen angel from the first book, whose name I can't remember for some reason, goes from kind of I think I needed 2 minutes per book. Oh my god, okay. The Colour Purple is a frequently banned book because of its violent content, and it does have incest, so obviously massive trigger warnings for this. I went into this having seen the movie, possibly when far too young to have seen that movie. And because of the movie, I knew what it contained, and I knew it was going to be really traumatizing, and I kind of psyched myself up to read this because I was like, oh, it's going to be hard. And then it actually turned out not to be, and I think that's because all of the abuse, etc. that happens in this book is always a little bit removed. It's happening to someone else, or it's happening in the past and just being spoken of. It's never something that is happening like in the immediate immediacy when you're reading it, so it's not quite as visceral and intense as it could be. I think I gave this 4 stars, so it's starting like 4 or 5 stars to me. It's well worth the read. Woman Talking is inspired by true events, wherein it came out that some men on a Mennonite community were drugging and sexually assaulting vast numbers of women in that community, including young girls. So obviously trigger warnings for sexual assault and pedophilia, holy shit. But again, this is something which is not super graphic because the events have already transpired when the book picks up. The men who are doing this have been arrested, and the men in the community have gone off to town to try and bail out these men and bring them back to the community and trying to deal everything within their community without involving the outsiders. While the men are away, a number of the women who are victims of these crimes have gathered to discuss what they are going to do. Are they going to stay, or are they going to go? And whilst this is... A minute's not long enough. My camera cut out halfway through talking about Sweet Pea, so I'm actually going to do the Sweet Pea review again just in case it didn't get filmed properly. So, starting with this one again. Sweet Pea is about a female serial killer who very much gets off on the whole killing thing and does some creepy things about that, but moving on. Her sort of thing is to go and put herself in dangerous situations, luring in dangerous men who are taking advantage of the dangerous situation she is in, but then haha, stabbo, and she kills them. I was slightly disappointed with how easily she kills them. She definitely inflicts non-lethal injuries on one man, and yet he still dies fairly quickly and readily. I feel like she physically overpowers these people far too easily, particularly when you consider that men who are going to attack a woman in a park, etc., quite often have gone there for that specific purpose and are prepared for it. So while they might not be prepared for the victim to have a weapon, they have still gone in expecting a fight. The Starless Sea is very hard to describe. I think this is a story that is more about aesthetic than about plot. And for me, I think it didn't quite get quite enough plot for it to work. Like, yes, it made sense within what it was, but it also didn't make any sense whatsoever. So it was a little bit wishy-washy to me, but at any rate, magical library that you can access through doors. Some of those doors are being destroyed, person discovers library, adventure ensues, the library might be in trouble. Lots of weird, inexplicable stuff about bees that I didn't feel was well enough explained to kind of settle well with me, but fine. Defy the stars. Earth and another planet, which it colonised generations earlier, have gone to war because the colonised planet has decided that they are not going to allow Earth to just use it as a resource. Earth is obviously crappy, doesn't look after itself. This new planet is going to put restrictions in place on resource use and look after the environment properly. The two main characters, obviously, with a name like Defy the Stars, one is a girl from one planet and one is a male android from the other planet, and oddly enough they go on an adventure together and develop respect and mutual feelings perhaps. The android is also like the most advanced android, and he happens to be modelled to look like a younger version of the man who developed all of the androids, and he was looked after by that man who called him his son, and honestly it just was so predictable. It was really fun. Damn! Oh my god. Okay, last book. The Hate You Give. This is about a young person who has witnessed a police shooting, and when I went into this I expected the young person to then become a figurehead at the front of protest actions around police brutality. However, that's not the path that it takes, and I think that's a really good thing. Instead of being pushed into this really vocal role, she instead tries to hide the fact that she was a witness, and the story is much more about her trauma and the way that this event affects her relationship with her friends who are predominantly white because she goes to a predominantly white school. I thought that was unexpected and actually really good. I think probably the more relatable and more common story in this situation is for a person to avoid the spotlight and to try and protect themselves first and foremost. Well, that was chaos. I mean, I knew it would be, but yeah, chaos. So I think what I'm gonna do, because some of those reviews were terrible, what I'm going to do is I'm also going to upload the video in which I talk about the 4 and 5 star books in detail, and I'll just leave a link below to there as a, you know, I can't remember what they call that, like the one where you can follow a link but it's not posted publicly, whatever it is. Anyway, I'll do that. So if you want to know more about the books that were good, you can follow that video. And I will, I think, put my star rating down the bottom because I think I probably didn't communicate which books were good or bad. Anyway, hopefully the chaos was entertaining and you have stuck around and had a good time, in which case, you know, maybe leave a like, leave a comment down below if you want me to like expand on any of this, or if you've read any of these books and want to chat about them, let me know down below. If you liked this video, don't forget to leave it a like, and if you are new around here, maybe consider hitting subscribe so you don't miss my next video, which will hopefully be a little bit more coherent, but no promises. See you next time.